Welcome to Tao Living, the Art of Living podcast with your host, Lou Corletto, where you will be supported to remember that you are the driver and not the vehicle, so that you can walk your life in trust. I am honored to have my next guest, who happens to be a repeat guest. Joan Rosenberg, PhD, psychologist, is a best-selling author, corporate wellness consultant, and media expert who is known globally as an acclaimed speaker and trainer in communication, confidence, resilience, authenticity, and grief. As a 3-time TEDx speaker and member of the Association of Transformational Leaders, she's been recognized for her innovative emotional mastery and confidence-building approach, and for her thought leadership and global influence and personal development. Dr. Rosenberg has served as a mental health media consultant for documentaries, print, radio, television, and digital outlets. She is a professor of psychology at Pepperdine University. To learn more about Dr. Joan, you can visit drjoanrosenberg.com. You can also follow her on Instagram at joanrosenberg.com. Her latest book is 90 Seconds to a Life You Love: How to Master Your Difficult Feelings to Cultivate Lasting Confidence, Resilience, and Authenticity. Ladies and gentlemen, help me and welcome Dr.
Ladies
Joan
and gentlemen,
Rosenberg.
please help me welcome the author of, if I can get that on my screen, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. Joan, it is so great to connect with you again. I love being in your presence and learning from you. And I am honored that you're here to serve me and the listening audience with your wisdom.
Well, listen, it's quite mutual, my friend. So I'm super happy to be here, and I'm all in because I learn just like you do.
So for those listening, if you have not heard Dr. Jones, the original interview we did based on her book, The 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, go listen to that. There's a part 1 and a part 2 because it was so in depth. Didn't want to have your brain explode while you're listening. So both of those are there. Dive into that. And just to give a context as we keep unfolding for today's conversation, Dr. Joan, if you wouldn't mind, if you would care to share, keep it in the positive, the 8 difficult feelings and then your fantastic Rosenberg Reset, just to give a context for those that are here now, and then we'll play from there.
Absolutely. So for me, Lou, it was all about helping people understand how to lean into unpleasant feelings. As a psychologist, that and a couple of questions really kept on driving a lot of my work. And it was to understand kind of what contributed to people feeling confident in the world. And the second, when I was in my professional life, was understanding what made it so difficult for people to experience and move through unpleasant feelings. And what I consistently saw were 7 or 8 different feelings that would come up that if people did not handle them well, they did not feel capable in the world. That was my best sense. And it's like life just felt like it would roll them over. And so that it was like, I got to figure this out. And the 8 difficult feelings are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration. And for me, again, the most common question I'll get around this is kind of like, why those 8? And for me, it's because they're the most spontaneous, they're the most common, everyday spontaneous reactions to things not turning out the way that we want or desire, or the way that we feel like we need or perceive we need. So that's why I chose the 8. We can go down the road of, well, how come I didn't choose all the others? But those are why those 8. And the Rosenberg Reset, again, a colleague named it. I leaned into that as well. And really, the reset is, you can think of as the formula for how to lean into unpleasant feelings and actually go through them so that you're not trying to ignore them or distract from them or disconnect from them. And the first part of it is choosing awareness as opposed to avoidance. So that it has to do with us being willing to be as aware of and in touch with as much of our moment-to-moment experience as possible. And that's different from avoiding, which involves things like ignoring or distracting, or and you can think about all the different ways we distract, and to think about think about sex or porn or social media or shopping or food or drugs or alcohol or having feelings about having feelings, and being sad that you're angry or angry that you're disappointed, or that's also a distraction. Anxiety is a distraction. Harsh self-criticism is a distraction. So I think I've identified like 35 or 40 ways that we distract. And some of them are really nuanced, like the last ones I just brought up. But my thing is I want people to lean into awareness and being aware of and in touch with their experience, as opposed to getting involved in all the distraction and disconnection. And then so it's the one choice, that's the awareness over avoidance. The 8 feelings is the second part of the formula, which we started with. And then the 90 seconds is the third part of the formula. So it's one choice, 8 feelings, 90 seconds. And the 90 seconds piece has to do, really is the method part of it. And as much as it's the method, I will tell you that the magic is in the 8 feelings. Mm. And so very briefly, it involves an understanding that we're one interconnected whole. Our brain is always feeding our body information. Our body is always feeding our brain information. So we're one interconnected whole. The second part is an understanding that most of us come to know what we're feeling emotionally through bodily sensation. So think a heaviness at your chest for sadness, for instance. That would be the bodily sensation. Like this heavy, I just feel this heaviness. Or somebody might feel burning at the back of the neck, or burning on their arms for anger. Clenched jaw, anger, but bodily sensations. So we come to know what we are feeling through bodily sensation. And the third part of this, this method is to understand that those bodily sensations are short-lived. That when a feeling gets triggered or it is evoked, that there's a rush of biochemicals that flood into our bloodstream that actually activate those bodily sensations I just named. And they flush out of the bloodstream in an upper limit of roughly about 90 seconds. So we're talking about, in order for someone to lean into feelings, pleasant or unpleasant, frankly, it means riding short-lived bodily sensation waves, because it's through those bodily sensation waves that we come to know what we're feeling emotionally. So that's the key. It's that my big premise, if you will, Lou, is that if you can ride one or more short-lived bodily sensation waves, and I'm emphasizing the more here, it's not just one wave, but one or more short-lived bodily sensation waves of one or more of those 8 unpleasant feelings, you can go pursue anything you want in life.
Delicious. Thank you for the amazing recap.
Yep.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is something in the one, well, many times that Joan and I have talked privately, but also in the first part and second part, which is a question she would often get as well is, well, if it's only 90 seconds, how come I feel like this lasts for decades, right? And the re-looping that we tend to do, which we're gonna come at that a little different here in just a minute, how we can break those loops, or at least one way we can break those loops.
Yep.
And so back to the beginning part, the one choice of being aware, which is staying present or staying home in the body instead of using the one of 35. I love that. Discerning at least 35 different kinds of distractions. One of the unique ways that we want to escape. I don't like this. I don't feel safe. I'm out. And I'll create one of these creative ways to go exit. Simply the business of my life. As long as I can keep running and try to outrun myself, I don't have to be home, and therefore I don't feel this.
Yeah. Right. And this is so keen to your work. It's totally aligned with everything you do.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, thank you for that. And so on that note, and so how do we stay here as we build into the next piece? How do we stay with the riding of that 90, especially the first flush is potentially an intense flush, right? It's like, woo, I know what I'm feeling. How can I choose to stay present with that? And knowing that, oh, I can do anything for 90 seconds.
Well, most people have that reaction, is that I can handle this. I can handle the 90 seconds. So one part of it may be simply cognitive awareness. You go into it with a new awareness, you can approach your life differently, period, right? So even having the cognitive awareness or the intellectual understanding is like, oh, wait a minute, this is short-lived. Let me experiment. So the first part is cognitive awareness, I would say. The second part is let me experiment. Let me be curious about my experience as opposed to judging it, right? So go into this with curiosity, with knowledge, a little bit of knowledge and meaning, a little bit of curiosity. And the next thing I would say is breathe. That in fact, when you allow, you can almost think of the breath as being your surfboard for the waves of feeling. That when you many people will, for instance, swallow or hold their breath, which are two other ways to distract, by the way, to shut it down. It's like, well, I ignore my feelings. Well, my question is, how do you do that? Well, two ways you do it is to actually hold your breath and to shut down. So the third way to as part of this sequence is to lean into it, is you allow, when you're aware that you're getting that rush, that flooding sensation, or whatever it is you're noticing, that you are reacting to something, then breathe right into it and allow your breath to almost carry the bodily sensation. And then if you have an opportunity that goes beyond that, my thing is pause for a moment. So breathe into it, pause in that breath, allow yourself to notice what the experience is, continue the breath. And then if you have an opportunity also beyond that, it's to then reflect on what this might mean. What is this about? What is my reaction attached to? And then you can get into the meaning parts that go beyond that.
Brilliant. As you were just sharing that, both a combination of both the cognitive awareness and breath, I just had this flash of when I took my first freediving class, showing up to the course. As hard as I may attempt, I couldn't go past 60 seconds. I'm like, turning purple, blah, blah, blah. And strictly one piece of information. It wasn't even a physiological technique. It was cognitive awareness. It was simply the information that holding breath when the urge to breathe comes, it's not because I'm out of oxygen, which is what I and most people think when that happens. It's the CO2's building. Just realizing I still have enough O2 to keep holding my breath. I went to 3 minutes within 45 minutes of the training. I could not get past 60 seconds. And then I held my breath for 3 minutes with the same physiological body. I didn't get fit in the next 45 seconds. And then breath. So as Dr. Joan knows implicitly, ladies and gentlemen listening, the way we breathe informs our body. It is a language. So it's definitely a surfboard. It is the language. So if we breathe in one way, which most people do, it informs our body that we're not safe. So, and it triggers the sympathetic system, which is the fight or flight, which is unfortunately where most people stay all day long. And the body can't really do well in that state. It's not meant to. Learning to breathe is slightly different. And it's just a simply long pause, exhale, slow exhale, not a pause. A long exhale informs the body that we're safe, and it triggers the parasympathetic system and gets our system to just chill so we can stay. It is safe to be here. So just some basic proper breathing will alter the way that you're communicating to yourself that life is easy and good and I'm safe, or it's not. Right. And if it's not, obviously, then remove yourself from the situation. So another, the follow-up into this place of the activation of the 8 difficult or uncomfortable feelings is not just how we breathe, but also how we speak to ourselves, right? Right. So the whole domain of self-talk, but what I like to call it as conscious languaging, or most of us, as I was until my teacher introduced it to me over 35 years ago, conscious languaging, or thoughts or things. So which ones am I having? And I realized I didn't pay attention to most of them. I was just repeating stuff, patterns that I grew up with, that some were healthy, many were not. They were based on fear, lack, and limitation, which affected me personally, professionally, financially, relationship-wise, because right, the thoughts that I'm holding, the verbiage that I'm saying keeps me in the loop. So back to that loop of, how come these feelings last more than 90 seconds? Because I keep putting myself back into state to keep generating those situations.
Right. So let me talk about the what I call kind of lingering feelings piece of it first. I in the book, I talk about three main ways that, and there are likely to be more, but these are critical enough that I think fosters this lingering, weeks, months, decades, years, decades old kind of an experience. And one part of it is that we actually try to suppress the thought. So we tell ourselves, well, I'm just not going to think about that. Well, if I tell you not to think of a zebra that has polka dots that are blue and yellow, and I really don't want you to think about that, then your first thing is to think about the thing. So it's the challenge here is that you have to think about something in order to make an effort to not think about it. And clearly that doesn't work. So that has a paradoxical effect. And actually you're going to think about the thing more that you're actually trying to suppress. That's number one. The second is that when you think certain thoughts or repeat certain thoughts or memories, then that given thought or that memory is going to bring up everything that's associated with it. And if there are feelings attached to it, and those feelings are not resolved, then you are likely to have a reaction. So the more you repeat the thought and memory, the more you're activating that same experience. And then it feels like it's lasting a long time as opposed to the brief transitory nature of feelings. The third part for me, Lou, is actually harsh self-criticism, which gets more specifically at your conscious languaging element. That's one aspect of it. So, and when I listen to people trash talk themselves, right? We can call it all sorts of things. I think it's one of the most damaging things that people can do to themselves psychologically, or potentially even the effects on the immune system. Because we know that it does damage to the immune system. And so that for me, harsh self-criticism is something that leads to that same quality of the feeling never goes away.
Oh, Lordy, we could unpack this for the next 3 days, just this last piece, 100%. Yeah. And so ladies and gentlemen listening, the self-harsh criticism, especially when most of it begins with the most powerful two words you could ever start any phrase off with, I am. Mm-hmm. Because we're now invoking the highest qualities of who we are, right? It says in all the scriptures, I am that I am. Right. I am that, right? So I am that. I am. Now I'm reaffirming. So if I am, and I fill it with some trash talk, I love that, which, Lordy, spent decades doing that and then decades cleaning it up. The depth of informing is greater than anybody outside of me could ever penetrate.
Correct.
And so this is what Dr. Jones is sharing with us is the critical importance to start adding some love to the equation for self, and let's come out of that process. So let's do that. Let's start from the top then of a piece that you recently shared around how can I come out of a loop that even, we're not even in trash talk anymore, just simple communications in the day about handling tasks, navigating basic life functions. When I speak a phrase that puts me into a potential loop of previous feelings, right, I can just reorient those words, same words in the phrase. By reorienting them, I can set myself free.
Right. So and I'll go two directions with this. One is that there are many people will use phrases that I call the am I, will I, can I, do I questions. So am I capable of achieving what I set out to achieve? Can I really pull this off? Do I have the skills? Do I have the knowledge? Do I have the competence? Do I have the resources? we can fill any in the blank there, to be successful. Will I complete this? Will I actually finish what I start? Right? So if you listen to those questions, and there are others like it, but 4 was enough for me at that point, that it was understanding that any answer to those questions, any use of those questions, and then any answer, any response, whatever you put on the tag end of it, only fosters doubt. That's all they serve to do, is they only foster doubt. And I actually think of these as a milder version of harsh self-criticism.
Love it.
And the reality is that it's not about asking a question. It's actually about making a statement. So that when you're inclined to ask that question, am I capable of achieving X? Or do I have the skills and knowledge? Then what you do is you flip the order of the words, as you were alluding to earlier, and it becomes I am, I do, I will, I can. And the only way that leads is to an experience of greater either self-competence or self-confidence. So it's most of the times when people are asking those questions, they actually already know that they have what it takes, but they're reluctant to engage in the risk-taking that involves the follow-through. And so it's, again, you shift can I, am I, will I, do I, to I can, I am, I will, I do. So you stop asking the question and you make the statement instead. So that's conscious languaging.
Brilliant. So from the place of when I use questions, I've opened up the door to doubt, which then pulls up feelings that reinforces when I didn't follow through, because I don't trust myself because I didn't follow through the last 3 times I said I was going to start the diet on Monday or whatever I'm playing with. And then to the flip, simply by choosing to flip the words, I went from a question and a doubt to a statement and a confirmation. I can, I will, right? And it changes everything.
Yes.
It puts you back in the driver's seat. It changes your physiology, which changes your state. And something I would put out for the listening audience, who at least this is my experience, so please, chime in with your expertise.
Sure.
Very similar. So back to, I remember, I think it was like an Abraham Hicks kind of thing of the emotional guidance system. This is just popping in my head. So if somebody's in grief, reaching for bliss is just a bit too far of a jump, right? So the recommendation of reaching to the emotion, feeling that's just above that, so I can start climbing this ladder. So in the same way, if I'm in such a deep place of challenge, disbelief of self, and I can't do that, I can't do that. Going to I will might be a big jump, but jumping to I can, I choose to, right? So there's an escalation up this conscious languaging ladder that is also appropriate to use. Pick the next one that you can see yourself implementing and acquiring, instead of trying to make a quantum leap. Otherwise, you're just now going to create more loop. Yep.
Right.
So there's an art form in that process as well. Anything else on that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely something you can stair step it, if you will, to kind of, and there's it's in the psychology they would call it scaffolding. You're literally scaffolding from one step to the next till you can eventually get to that bliss point. So the other thing for people to keep in mind, and this is something I actually kind of hold as a mantra for myself, Lou, and that is that the key here is to think, to speak, and to act, or to take action in the direction you want your results to be. So if you're getting into asking, can I questions, or do I questions, then that's not the kind of thinking or speaking, internal speaking, that is going to get you to where you want to be. So if you, again, choose it as a mantra, think, speak, and act in the direction you want your results to be.
Brilliant. So I was just looking back in my notes. The number one of the three ways in which to reinforce lingering feelings that we don't want is to focus on what we don't want, right? So the zebra with the blue spots, right? And so this is something that I found in my journey decades ago, opening up to this process, discovering how much time I spent on what I don't want, wondering why I wasn't achieving what I wanted, because where attention goes, energy flows, right? And so, ladies and gentlemen, listening is be mindful. This is where the intentional part of your willingness to shift your life comes in. Nobody can do it for you, right? We all need support and assistance, yes, but you have to do the work. Nobody can breathe for you. Nobody can think your thoughts. We can get reminders to breathe and get reminders to choose better, higher quality thoughts, but we have to ultimately do that. And to pay attention just by observation doesn't make this difficult. And the simplest way, one of the ways that I find anyways, is by speaking naturally. This is what I teach with my students, is about learning to use conscious language. Right. Speak naturally, just let it happen, but pay attention. So use that observer aspect. Let the words fly. Don't edit because it's no good. It doesn't help. You're cheating and it's fake. Let it fly and you'll just notice where you're at. Don't judge it. And then recognize the words that do come out, be it now you discover what it is you're focusing on. I don't want another bad relationship. In your mind, you think you're saying you want a good one, but you're not. You're focusing on what you don't want, which is going to keep reinforcing that entire dynamic. I don't want to be in debt still. And I keep focusing on debt, right? And across the spectrum of life when we do this, versus back to what Joan just said. What is it that you do choose to focus on? What is it you really desire? Then choose that. I choose a healthy relationship. That's a world of difference than I don't want a crappy one.
Right.
I choose to be wealthy is quite different than I need to get out of debt. And what's really neat is the system, life, is built in this redundancy that if I focus on the dark, light doesn't show up. But when I focus on the light, darkness goes away.
Right.
If I focus on illness, health doesn't show up. When I focus on life force, illness goes away. Right. So there's this really cool built-in support system for us. And if we use it to our advantage, it's incredible. When we keep using it against us, it just becomes more of a pain in the hiney.
Absolutely true. So I have no more to add to that. It's a beautiful response right there.
And so what we're offering to you, the listening audience, what Dr. Joan is, and what I am offering to you is, as we both have, right, the keys, right, are in our hands. We've just pretended that they're not. When we tend to walk around in mystery, wonder what's up. And so for those like Dr. Joan, who's the Sherpa, has been up the mountain and back quite a few times with the keys of wisdom, but she didn't, it wasn't special dispensation. She had to do her own work.
Oh yeah.
As she tells beautifully in her stories in the book and in her TED Talks, right? She had, quite literally had her ass handed to her. Like, if you're on the planet, you have two.
Yes.
Yet she's done the level of work. Now she can gift us with the cliff notes, right? So we don't have to take 30 years of rediscovering how to not keep getting our asses handed to us. Right. And so these pieces right here, the recognizing the 8 difficult feelings, utilizing the Rosenberg Reset, be willing to apply some conscious languaging or proper
right,
personal usage of terminology. Yep. So these are keys that will profoundly shift your life and set you free and stop a lot of the trauma that is created by not choosing to use these. But the work is up to you, right? So the support is necessary, but the work only you can do.
Right. That's the critical piece. And for me, it's, another one that I use, and there's different phrases that come to mind, Lou, and just like holding the one about thinking, speaking, and acting in the direction I want my results to be. Another one that I hold, one is approaching life with curiosity, which we talked about a little bit earlier. But the third one is that I want to see how far I can stretch in life. And so so part of that then for me is that entails curiosity as really the process by which to do it, and a willingness to take risks and a willingness to experiment. And so that's really what I would also say to the people listening is like, go into this with curiosity. Just experiment with it, just like what you were saying. Just like, don't try to hold back and structure your language before it's come out. Just let it rip, and then notice what happened. Just start to listen. Not only do you want other people listening to what you're saying, it's important for you to be listening to what you're saying. Because as soon as you kick in the awareness, profound change is possible.
Off the charts, like almost for at least for me anyways, and for people that I've used, in just this one tool, the willingness to upgrade the words that come out of your mouth, because now you're informing yourself, and it drives the next level of who you be. So for instance, a really small example, but it's the phrase that I remember when I first started this actual work around conscious languaging, when my teacher, he didn't call it conscious languaging. He just called it thoughts are things. Like,
right.
Be mindful what you think and speak, boy.
Right.
Thoughts are things. And so I started to do this work, and I hated him for 2.5 years straight, just from introducing me to this process. But the first one I remember, which was, and it's a phrase of efficiency. Hey, let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And it was like, as soon as this new awareness on me, hearing that phrase come out of my mouth, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I have respect for all life, and I've been a vegetarian for over 35 years. I don't kill birds. Why would I kill 2? And people are like, well, it's just a phrase of efficiency. I'm like, but it's a phrase that doesn't match who I am. I can choose a different phrase for efficiency, and I don't have to murder something, right? And so for those who are listening that might not get what I'm saying, just hit cancel and delete. And for those who are at least open to what I'm saying, is it's moments like that. I'm speaking something that's against who I am and what I stand for. Right. I'm responsible for continuing that until I choose not to.
Right.
Going to the gym. Oh, this workout's killing me. Is it? Right? So small things like that make a world of difference when we're willing to pay attention what comes out of our babbling trap and turn it into artistry to bring peace and joy into my own system, right? Or in this case, into your own system. The approaching life with curiosity is, I remember when we first met, one of the pieces you shared out of the book, which was this, the beautiful concept of conscious and unconscious vulnerability, right? Because stepping into a life of curiosity, for those who are into growth, people know that the only way we can grow is to be in an uncomfortable situation. We cannot grow in comfort. It doesn't work, right? Look at the beach. I love the ocean. I love it. But what grows on the beach? Nothing. It's sand, right? What grows in a pile of manure? Everything, because it's got a lot of fertilizer, right? So possible to do a quick synopsis of those 2 phrases to help people understand where that delineation is, and then how they can consciously put it into use, intentionally put it into use.
You're talking the 2 phrases that you mentioned with
the unconscious and conscious vulnerability.
Vulnerability
in self.
Yes. So it's so here's the way I think about it. And to me, frankly, Lou, what we're talking about around this idea of vulnerability, this is the kernel of, if I were to bring something down to the most specific atom-like or molecule-like understanding, this would be it around this idea of vulnerability. And then I'll link it to the 8 feelings as well. So vulnerability, as I named as one of the 8 feelings or feeling states. Vulnerability is really kind of a feeling state. So think of vulnerability first as this physical, emotional, and mental sense or cognitive sense that you could be hurt. And the truth of the matter is that we are all vulnerable all of the time. So, you could have a thunderstorm or a lightning storm or tornado hit you, just unexpected or whatever, or fire or whatever, in terms of where you are. Where I am, it might be earthquakes, right? Or randomly, we know people have been assaulted or shot or this or that, right? all these unexpected things. So the reality is every single one of us is vulnerable 24/7, though we don't keep that awareness right front and center, because if we did, we might never leave the home, right? So my thing is that it is to keep that level of awareness about it at a low level of awareness. So 10%, 15%, 7%, just enough that you go, I was granted this day. How do I want to choose to use it? So that you can use your, what I call non-conscious vulnerability, your awareness of non-conscious vulnerability, to help you make better choices that are aligned, or maybe I should take the word better out, but make choices that are more aligned with who you are or who you want to become. Excuse me. So again, non-conscious vulnerability, it's the vulnerability that we all experience 24/7, and it just is what it is. None of us escapes it. Every one of us experiences it every moment. We have built-in mechanisms to handle it. That's the fight-flight system, if you will. The stress response, et cetera, et cetera. The second part is what I call conscious vulnerability. So anytime we put ourselves out there, we go to work, we speak in front of a group, we put writing out there, you doing the podcast, me being on the interview with you. These are actions, if you will, reflecting conscious vulnerability. I am choosing, or you are choosing, to put yourself in a situation where you're taking a risk to put yourself out there in whatever form you put yourself out there. And that might also include either looking at somebody and saying, that disappointed me, I wish that hadn't happened, or looking at that same person and saying, I love you so very much, I want to see you more. That's also conscious vulnerability. Is across the whole spectrum of our lived experience. So the other understanding that I would have people take from this is that in order to handle non-conscious vulnerability or conscious vulnerability, it takes being able to experience and move through the other 7 feelings. That when we know that we can handle the undesired emotional outcome, meaning one or more of the other 7 feelings, sadness, embarrassment, disappointment, anger, right? When we know that we can handle one or more, and the ideal would be you can actually handle all 7, you have an understanding that you will be able to handle those moments that none of us want to experience, that are the non-conscious vulnerable moments. And they will also help us lean into to take the risks we want to take to pursue the life we want to live, because we know we can handle the undesired emotional outcome on the other side of that as well.
Delicious summary. Thank you. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when you read Joan's book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, that gets unpacked even more because she has the time. It's just so, the summary is just delicious. So thank you for that. And I even heard something differently this time, having heard this before with you directly. This is the way I took it from that, is that piece around the non-conscious vulnerability, to have this percentage of awareness that life can act on me. Not a damn thing I can do about it's acting on me, but I have everything to do about what I do when it does act on me. Correct. So that gift of show up and live out fully, right? So that's my interpretation of what I heard. So it gives me that, right? So what is the life that I choose to live? Well, there is no someday on a calendar, ladies and gentlemen. There isn't, right? There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but there's no someday on the calendar. So decide what that is and get to it. Yes. Let's see, to honor your time and everybody else's, I just looked down and saw 3D time clicking around the top. There was something else in this. I know this is a core piece for you personally and professionally, this topic of confidence.
Yes.
And in this state that humanity's in, I've watched a lot of confidence be eroded because of a narrative that's been put out, and people do, everybody does what they do with it. Yet there's been so much fear put into the field that
Yes.
confidence is just so. In closing, if you don't mind, can you bring some nuggets to help us to re-engage in confidence?
Yeah. Again, my definition of confidence, first of all, let's understand that. And that is that you have the deep sense that you can handle the emotional outcome of whatever you face or whatever you pursue. Takes us right back to the 8 difficult feelings. If you can handle those, you can handle the difficulties and the fear that is even in the field right now. So I would say there's a couple different things, and I've had many people ask me about this, Lou. And the thing is that it's really important. It's really important to handle your thoughts. That you be in charge of your thoughts. As much as we're inundated with things that elicit fear, and actually in some cases want to evoke fear, it becomes really important that, again, there's a reasoning mind. It's like you have to parse your way through what's true, what's not, or what is aligned with you and what's not. And it's not going to be just how you think. It's also going to be how you manage your emotional state as well. So it's going to be both parts of that. But that you're in charge of what you think, you're in charge of how you think it, and you're in charge of your emotional response. Again, not until it's in your conscious awareness, but once it's there, you're in charge of it. Or once you have the awareness, you're in charge of it. So my thing is, as much as there's fear there, it still becomes important for you to find things that are purposeful and are meaningful, and that you decide that no matter what, you're going to still focus on your contribution, or what those aspects that bring value and meaning and purpose to you, that you stay dialed into that as a way to push back fear and to push back despair and to push back helplessness. Because that's what a lot of the fear activates, is despair and helplessness. The other part that to me is also super important is that you stay in community, that you do not try to do this alone, that you, for better or for worse, you connect with like-minded individuals. But again, my thing is that in the best of circumstances, you're always dialed into life, not things that are damaging or destroying life. And so it's you're gathering for the purpose of being constructive and constructing, not for the purposes of damage or destruction. So it's honoring life, it's honoring our social needs and our beingness by staying in community, and then it's managing our mental and emotional state by staying dialed into the things that provide value, provide meaning, and provide a sense of purpose.
Beautiful, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my terminology around what Dr. Joan just described, which is who's writing your script, you or someone else, right? So put yourself back in the driver's seat, because it is your life, right? So write your own script by choosing your thoughts. And for me, the gift of the last 2 years, the metaphor of earth and a piece of coal, right? The only way coal gets turned into diamond is through pressure.
Right.
And we're all under pressure. It's what we get to do with that, right? Do you let the pressure crush you and turn it into carbon, or does the pressure turn you into the beautiful diamond that you are? Because you already are the diamond, right? Just gloss up the facets and shine your freakiness.
Right. Yep. I'm with you. So yes, we've all experienced that pressure, and we want to make that transition to allowing our gemness to show up. Yes. So yeah.
Wonderful. So Dr. Joan, how can the beautiful audience reach out and connect with you? So It will be, I will have a hyperlink in the show notes so everybody can grab that
Right.
if you're in driving, but at least the verbal aspect.
Right.
So reach out, grab your book and find out what events you're speaking at and teaching at. I'll also, with your permission, I'll even put the links to your previous TED Talks and the newest one there as well.
Fine. Great. Awesome. Sounds great. So drjoanrosenberg.com is the easiest way. And if people want to stay in the loop in terms of the things I'm thinking about or writing about, then it would be certainly getting on my list to get that exchange. At some point, I will return to doing some more events. So if you're interested in my training, then it would be certainly getting on the list so that you'll get the information about that. If you want a little bit of what we've talked about, if you go to drjoanrosenberg.com/gift, then you'll have something that mentions the 8 unpleasant feelings or 8 difficult feelings again. And I think there's a confrontation prep checklist and even a sample of what's in the book, part of that. And you know what? Instagram is Instagram, Twitter, some of the LinkedIn, some of those other areas I'm on, and typically the handle is Dr. Joan Rosenberg. So it would be finding me those ways as well. And so it'd be great.
Excellent. So ladies and gentlemen, please reach out to this brilliant, fabulously talented, grounded woman who can help steer you in the course to your own greatness, to remember who you be, which is just unlimited potential and this brilliant, shining gem. Dr. Joan, thank you for taking your time to share with me and the audience. Thank you for all you do and what you bring to the world. And until we play again, abundant blessings.
Sounds awesome. And as always, I'm humbled and honored, Lou. So thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Tao Living Podcast, The Art of Living. Now go to loucorletto.com, LOUCORLETO.com to receive your free training, the operator's manual for your vehicle. See, when you buy a phone, you get a manual. When you buy a car, you get a manual. When you entered your body, no manual. Let me teach you how it's really designed to work. Also, help me help others and share this podcast far and wide. And subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, abundant blessings.